Hello folks, and welcome back to the workshop. The summer is here, the sun is out. That can only mean one thing: barbecue and beers. So in this video I'm going to make this picnic table out of 4x2s. So let's step back into the workshop and let's get going. Okay folks, for this little project I'm going to be using some construction grade 4x2 or 2x4, whichever takes your fancy. And for this I have 6 lengths of 4.8 meters in length, which is 15 foot 9. Now this is just ordinary rough sawn wood. It's not pressure treated or anything like that, because where I'm going to be using this, it's actually going to be under a cover, so it's actually not going to be getting wet. But if you're going to be using wood for furniture outside and it's going to be getting wet, I would suggest maybe getting pressure treated wood. But for me, this is perfect. Now, because it's rough sawn, I've already run it through the planer on both faces and just took 1 millimeter off just to smoothen it up a little bit. And it's also square edged, so I'm going to run it through the spindle molder and I'm going to put a round over on all the corners. So we'll do that now and then we'll move on from there. With the 4x2s rounded over, I have taken the time to draw a full-sized end section of the picnic table. Now the reason I've done this is it gives me the lengths of all the components required for the table. So I have drawn it out, making the top 6 4x2s wide. I'm making it 30 inches high, and I'm making the top of the seats 17 inches high. And I'm also putting a 28-degree angle on the legs. So when I've drawn it up like this, it's very simple to measure the components, the length of the components off these. And it also, when you go to put it together, you have the intersecting points that you can transfer onto the legs or the rails as you're putting it together, and you can line it up off this as well. So just a tip, if you're doing something like this that have angles and things like that, just draw it out full scale first. Takes about 5 minutes, but it could save a lot of headaches as you go through it. So I know that I need 3 of the cleats here, which are 23¼ inches long. I need 2 rails at 53 inches long, and I need the 10 boards to make the top and the 2 seats 66 inches long. So we'll cut those now, and we'll bevel off the edges on them as well, and we'll come back then and we'll cut the 4 legs. Okay, so with the top cleat and the rails cut, the next thing we need to do is the leg. Now, I have a piece here to make the leg. Now, I marked this out so that the leg was at 28 degrees, but I need to double check that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one end of this at 28 degrees. It is a bit longer than it needs to be. And I'm going to bring it back and I'm going to check it when the top cleat is in place to make sure that it still lines up, because it's easier to adjust it by a half a degree or a degree now than it is when you've cut both ends of the legs. So I'm going to cut one end, bring it back, and then we'll check it. Okay, now I have one end cut. I can offer that into position and check it with the line. And lo and behold, it's perfect first time. So when I have that there now, like I said earlier, all you need to do is transfer the mark of the ground that you have marked on the board onto the stick, and now you're wanting to cut that at that angle. So I'll go back over to the saw. I'm going to cut that at that angle. I'm going to set the fence, and then I'll be able to cut all the legs. Okay, now that that's cut, just one final check again, just to make sure, and there you go, that's perfect. So that's the 4 legs cut, the 2 rails cut, and the cleats are cut. So I just want to do one more thing before I put them together. I just want to carry the round over that I've put on them around the ends and on the 45s and on the bottoms of the legs. Just any place there's a sharp corner that's going to be exposed, I just want to do it. And on the ends of all the boards for the top and for the seats as well. So I'm going to do all that, and then we're ready for assembly. Okay, with those pieces rounded off, I've now ready to assemble the leg section of the picnic table. Now for this, I've brought it back to the drawing, and I've used the drawing to transfer the lines back on to the components to line everything up. So I've done it at the top, and I've done it at the intersecting points of between the rail and the leg as well. So that if I move it, I can move it back, just line up those lines, and I know that that's exactly where I need it to be. So just makes life an awful lot simpler when you don't have to be trying to measure when you're doing this part of it. Now, I've bored a couple of pilot holes in the top. I'm going to use a couple of 100mm screws into the leg, and I'm going to temporarily pin this rail to the legs with a 16 gauge nailer so that I can turn it over and I can screw it from the other side, because I don't want the screws shown on the outside of the leg. And I'll also be putting a bolt in those as well. Now I'm going to use some polyurethane construction adhesive to stick this together. Now because it's kiln dried, I could use PVA glue, but I just find that the construction adhesive works a little bit better. And if you're using pressure treated wood, you shouldn't actually use PVA glue anyway, because the moisture content will be higher in the pressure treated wood, so you should really be using a polyurethane glue or a polyurethane construction adhesive on pressure treated wood. So just if you're using pressure treated wood for anything, you know, don't be using PVA glue. It's just not going to work right for you. So I'm just going to bang on and put this together, and we'll come back then when we're ready to do the top. Okay, now that we have the legs done, it's time to move on to the top. Now for the top, I have picked out the 6 cleanest looking 4x2s that I had, and I put the nicest looking face facing down, so that, because that'll be the top of the table once we flip it over. And I've actually added a 6mm piece of MDF between every board, just to act as a spacer to space out the boards. And I've also just put a clamp on either end just to hold it all square when I've squared it up, so that it won't be wanting to move around on me. Now I've marked in 7 inches from both ends to where I'm going to be putting the legs, and I have marked the centre as well, where I'm going to be putting the centre cleat. And I've bored out, pre-drilled the cleats in the top of the legs for screws, and I've offset each screw in each board so that you don't have the two of them in line with one another. It'll be less inclined to split the wood if you kind of stagger them and keep them as far away from each other as you can on each side. So all that's left to do now is just add a bit of construction adhesive and place these on and screw them down. Okay, with the legs screwed to the top, the next thing I want to do is add a brace from the leg to the table to support both ends of the table. Now for that, I just position the piece that I'm wanting to put in the centre. I make sure that my leg is square to the top, which it is, and then using my square, I just square up and this end to the centre of the cleat in the middle. I also square up from the rail up like that, and I'm going to do it on both sides of this, and you'll see why in a minute. Now, so that's the length that it needs to be between that and the cleat, but I want to lower it down. So I want to have this notched so that when it sits over the end of the leg like that, that there'll be a piece go out here. That just makes it a stronger joint. So let's just picture that has been there like that. So I'd be cutting that in at 90 degrees to this one. So you're leaving this, you're removing that. But to carry that down to the bottom, to get the bottom angle cut, if you measure what height the length of the line is, it's 4 3/4 inches. Measure up from the bottom of the table, 4 3/4 inches. And if you want you have this cut here, just square in off that, like so, and you cut it to there. Once that sits down, this will then be level with the cleat, and that will notch in over that. And as you can imagine, that when that's like that, that gives more support. I know you've screwed it, but that actually gives a little bit more support to the brace. So I'm just going to cut that on the bandsaw now, and when I have a cut, I'll come back and we'll screw it into place. Okay, there's the brace cut, like I said, and there's the notch for the sit in. So hopefully this will fit in nice and snug. So as you can see, that's a perfect snug fit on that. So all that requires now is a couple of screws in the leg and a couple of screws in the middle. So that's that done. I won't bore you looking at the screws being driven. So I'm going to screw that. I'm going to do the other brace, and then we'll be turning it over and we'll be adding the seats. Okay, the seat is a very simple affair. It's just 2 more pieces of 4x2. I have another piece of 4x2 in the centre. Here a little cleat just to support the centre of the seat. And other than that, it's just a case of lining up level with the front of the rail. Get the same distance on both ends. 6/3. Mark it like we did all the other components. Mark the seat. And mark the rail, and that's it. Bit of construction adhesive, bore a few pilot holes, drive a few screws. I'm only going to screw down through the top of these because it's the seat. It's not, I didn't want to have screws in the top, but I don't really mind having screws in the seat. So that's about it. I'm going to bang on and do this, and then I'll do the other one. Okay folks, there you go. One finished picnic table built out of 4x2s. And as you can see, it's good and sturdy. If it holds me up, it'll hold up anything. So, as usual, I'd like to say that if you've enjoyed this video, maybe you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, maybe you'd consider subscribing to the channel. So, all that's left for me to say now is, thanks very much for watching. And I hope to see you again soon. Good luck.